All right, welcome back to the Perkins Podcast. This is Alan Perkins from Horns Digest through the Scout Network. Don't forget to check out Horns Digest, where Chip Brown has 25 years of experience covering UT athletics. And make sure you follow me on Twitter as well at Alan Perkins HD. And then I've also created a YouTube channel. If you just type in Alan Perkins HD in the YouTube search bar and scroll down past the more famous Alan Perkins of the world, you'll be able to find my channel. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow, please. So moving on with part 2 of the college football playoff. The next team that I'm going to be examining is Washington. So their quality win is Utah, at Utah, and they only won by one possession on a late punt return. And their loss was against USC, but it was at home, and it was by 13 points. So I think that's a huge difference when comparing all the other teams that have one loss that we've been looking at so far, because Michigan and Ohio State were both lost on the road, and they also won or lost by one possession, whereas Washington was at home and they lost by 13. So that to me is going to really cause a lot of problems for Washington as it relates to getting into the playoff, because I don't know that they can overcome that unless teams in front of them lose, unless they get help from other teams. So in addition to that, their out-of-conference schedule, Washington's out-of-conference schedule was very weak. They played Portland State, Idaho, and Rutgers. So that's obviously a pitiful out-of-conference schedule. And then lastly, the Pac-10 is perceived to be weak this year, as Oregon and Stanford are having down years in comparison to what they've done lately. And then USC is not the USC of the Pete Carroll era, obviously, even though they've been rolling along lately. They still have 3 losses, and they've clearly been in disarray in general since Pete Carroll has left. And not only that, but now Washington's only win over Utah has even gone down another notch, as Oregon just beat Utah last week, so that doesn't help Washington's case either. Moving on to Wisconsin. Wisconsin's quality wins include Louisiana State, Nebraska, and then hypothetically they would beat Michigan, Ohio State, or Penn State in the Big Ten championship game, just depending on how all of that plays out. So if Wisconsin were to win out, then they would have another notable win against Michigan, Ohio State, or Penn State. Obviously, if they lose, then they're out, clearly. Their losses were against Ohio State and Michigan, both by one possession. They lost to Ohio State in Madison, and they lost to Michigan in Ann Arbor. But like I said, both those games were one-possession games. So I think that Wisconsin's strength of schedule really helps them out a whole lot, because both of their losses are to teams that are in the top 5. So it's not as if those losses came against weak opponents, and then they were also one-possession games, and one of them was on the road. So to me, I would rather have a team that's played a very hard schedule and still only has 1 or maybe even 2 losses versus a team that has no losses or 1 loss, but their schedule is really, really weak, like Washington's, who, as I stated in the previous podcast, has a strength of schedule of 98, according to NCAA.com, based on opponents' win and loss record. So I think that Wisconsin could still sneak in. They'll need some help from the teams ahead of them, but I think they could still sneak in with 2 losses. Moving on to Oklahoma. Oklahoma was beat badly by Ohio State in Norman, and Oklahoma also lost to Houston. And Oklahoma's win is biggest win is against West Virginia, which just happened this past weekend. They won handily in Morgantown, and then hypothetically they would beat Oklahoma State if they were going to be in consideration, because obviously if they lost, that would put them at 3 losses, and it would be a moot point. So that would be another notable win for Oklahoma, would be against Oklahoma State this coming week. Keep in mind, while I'm doing this podcast, also at this time, it's 11:30 Central Time on November 20th, Sunday. So that's the current situation as far as the landscape of college football and where we're at. Michigan, Ohio State are coming up. Alabama, Auburn is coming up. Championship games are still yet to be played, obviously. So that's where we're at as you're listening to this podcast. So the other problem that Oklahoma has is that they only beat TCU, Texas Tech, and University of Texas all by just one possession. All those games were on the road and or against the Oklahoma UT game was, of course, played in the Cotton Bowl, as it is annually. So it's a neutral site game. But to beat all of those teams, which are average or below average this year, by just one possession doesn't bode well for Oklahoma either. The Big 12 is a weak conference this year, clearly. And West Virginia, in my mind, hasn't been that impressive. If you look at Skylar Howard, and West Virginia's quarterback, to me, he's a turnover machine. And if you listen to Holgorsen talk about him, Holgerson's not even that terribly impressed with him if you really analyze it closely. So even the win against West Virginia isn't that impressive when compared to what some of the other teams that are being discussed in the college football playoff, what they've done and what they have on their resume. And then, like I said, Oklahoma plays Oklahoma State this week, and so that could be a notable win for them. But Oklahoma State lost to Central Michigan, and Oklahoma State lost to a Baylor team, which is in complete disarray after all the rumors are flying around with the coaching staff and the problems that are going on with their support of Arch Briles and the team just completely imploding from the inside out. So that loss for Oklahoma State doesn't look great, which doesn't then in turn look great for Oklahoma beating Oklahoma State. It's not as impressive as maybe some of the other wins from the other teams. So, yeah. Having said all that, Oklahoma definitely is going to need some help if they expect to get in the playoff. So I think that it's obviously, to say the least, unlikely that Penn State, Oklahoma State, or Colorado get in. Those are the next couple teams rounding out the top 10. Although 3 of those teams have 2 losses, it's possible. And it's definitely, it could happen, but I don't think it's a high likelihood. They're going to need a lot of help, all 3 of those teams, to be able to get in. So, anyways, that's going to conclude part 2 of the Perkins Podcast covering the college football playoff. Again, I'm Alan Perkins, work for Horns Digest through the Scout Network. Don't forget to check out the Horns Digest page, where Chip Brown has 25 years of experience covering UT athletics. And make sure you follow me on Twitter at AlanPerkinsHD. And I appreciate you all listening, and I appreciate all of your support. Like I said, don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow the page on YouTube and on Spreaker. And y'all have a fantastic evening. Much appreciated. Talk to y'all later.